Hello people. I wanted to describe something fairly basic that I've realised recently. It actually has quite a lot of, I believe, fairly powerful and specific insights into the transits, but I'm not going to go into those in this video. But later on I might bring in this story in order to explain things about the transits. This is a personal story. It isn't theoretical knowledge that's expressed in a way that is applicable to everyone. This is literally a personal story. The reason it is because sometimes we don't always have to draw the dots, obviously. Sometimes just hearing someone else's experience on something can teach us something about ourselves. In fact, that is very often the way we learn. Anyway, so the experience that I'm going to talk about relates to Neptune's transit that I talked about earlier. The concepts I wanted, and then followed up in a more detailed way when I had more insight in this video here, I Am No Healer. What I showed in the second video there was that I feel that in relation to my personal decisions, I can either block my chart or properly use my chart, it feels like. So when I try to go the healer route, I tend to get kind of messed up and frustrated and stuff. And when I go the music and meditation route, things seem to clear. I feel a lot better. I feel a lot more intelligent and stuff like that. And I'm going to continue on with that theme in this video. So let's start here. What's with this black box? This black box, which we will come back to, is the original motivating factor to want to sort any of this out, to want to move forward and get on with things. This black box represents, the issues. For me, that's health problems is in there, bullying, problems with friends, problems with relationships, anything that winds me up and I don't have a ready-made way of solving. And these are the problems everyone has. Everyone has a different black box, so to speak. So for some this might be child abuse, for some this might be violence, and for many there will be various mental health issues that have been pushed down. And so this is a motivating factor, which I will come back to. But I'm going to take you on a story. So this is the individual as they start out. This is the person. And we're going to start out before the person even does anything in the real world. They produce the energy that they are going to use for this world. This is before it gets put to anything, as I have just said. This energy can be used for what the person wants to put their life towards. This is very, very basic, very, very obvious. But it's like we only have so much energy in a day. So if we do one thing, we close off the other thing. So some people, this energy, there's a lot of sexual or workforce energy here. Some people, there's a lot of intellectual energy, technical thinking tendencies, and all that kind of stuff. These are my core emotions in this sense, but this premises anybody. Before our energy actually gets applied to anything specific, it just exists unmanifested in a sense. I'm going to briefly just explain what's happening off to the right here. Off to the right is me and meditation and music, which I've said is the thing that works for me. But we don't need to stop at that for a long time. We can come back to that. First, what I'm going to say is that the choice to do energy therapy instead was one that I've struggled with a lot. It's one that I really felt could be my real path as such. It was my mind's story as to what to do with all these skills that I have, in a sense, or tendencies. The fact that I'm very into psychology, the fact that I'm very into human design, the fact that I'm always doing something in this area makes me think that maybe I'm destined to be a healer. And so when I apply my energy to this kind of healing, I'm making a choice to go in this direction. On just this point was the immediately previous video on I Am No Healer, on just the energy therapy itself. But as we consider things emotionally like this, if we put activity towards an area, and this is purely emotional, this is time spent, this is emotional focus in this area, but there's not a lot of actual physical manifestation of anything in this area. I'm not going out and healing people. It's not a big factor of my life. I'm not taking money for healing people. I'm not writing about the destined path of a healer or anything like that. At the moment it's just energy, but as someone focuses in a certain area, it opens up things in the real world, and this is where it starts to become a bit of a problem. So what it did for me is that it opened up the thought for me as, do I want to be a counsellor? All of this information that I have, and it's more than just chakras and stuff, like I have actual information on mental health disorders and experience. Should I do counselling? And I looked into this. I talked to people about it. This became a real in the world thing, and it became a real in the world thing because people had suggested this to me. Like, I had talked about mental health conditions and people had said, oh, you're really good at that. And I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about whether that's what I'm meant to be doing. And they're like, oh yeah, well, go and do this thing, go and talk to this person. And this makes the blockage worse. What tended to happen to me was, as I showed in the previous video on this subject, when I start going down this route, I start to create blockages, and it's hard to describe. It's like emotion that doesn't want to be accessed. And it gave me a lot of additional feelings, like a kind of madness that was created that gave me extra energy and gave me extra blockage. And if I'd have carried on down that route where things were obviously going quite wrong, but I couldn't quite get there, then this extra energy created would have then been analysed, and it would have gone back and created more extra problems. It would have started up a codependence type of thing, and I'd have tried to contact people and tried to smooth things over, people who are not reasonable, and it would have created this kind of cycle of not self madness. So this was obviously a good reason why I shouldn't be doing counselling. But then we get even further, and this was a difficult thing for me. This has felt like pulling out a really deep root inside myself that I didn't really want to pull up. And that's not necessarily a pleasant feeling, is it? So there's someone that I've talked about fairly frequently actually on this channel, and I've put him at the top here, something that symbolizes him, but I'm just going to say that he's an online personality and he does online counseling sessions. Now, the theme of this entire thing on the left here, this entire 3-story little story, is on what basis can we actually reject something that we have no reason to reject, in a sense. Like, there obviously is a reason to reject these things on the left because they're not working for me. But there's nothing wrong with energy healing. it was in the law of one. There's, even if you're not going to recognize that there is a metaphysical component to it, it's basically just relaxation and improving your blood flow from a skeptical perspective. And that is scientifically proven. But I'm not a skeptic, and I do believe that that kind of thing is healing. Why would somebody not have healing if it's available? Similar thing with the counselling. Like, why are you not going to use those skills to talk to people and have those people talk to you? And what possible reason could you have to reject these things? And sometimes something is uniformly positive seemingly, but it's not suited to us. And in this case, it wasn't suited to me. And this experience escalated to the point where I realized that the thing at the top here, which is a very positive person, very service to other person out in the world, is something that I need to let go of. And that's not a particularly pleasant insight. And it's definitely not particularly pleasant to follow up on that. I mean, there are lots of reasons for it. This philosopher I've been paying attention to for years. There's a lot that I will carry with me from looking at his teachings. But part of it, I suspect, is that going back to this densities chart that I talked about in my immediately last video, I'm not on the level of 6 density at the top here. I'm, I think, one lower. I'm a wisdom being. It's just all wisdom. You can see from this channel, it's just wisdom. There's no deeper emotional message here, or there is something like that, but it's wisdom, it's nothing else. And the people above me are dealing with a lot of other things. So they have deep emotions, they have complex experiences and life things. And those people are just dealing with some things that I don't deal with. And the way I process things as someone who is at a lower level is perhaps something worth retaining, since I have no need for the skills to deal with things above me, in a sense. That's just a theory. But it's an interesting one, and if my very weird way of looking at the world could bring very unique ways of handling things, I think that would be kind of interesting. So we'll add another bit of the story on here, the black box. Now, I would say that this philosopher has been someone that has kept at bay a lot of these psychological issues. And remember that the psychological issues used to be insurmountable in a sense, because the illness, the physical illness, which was pressing on my brain, it was doing a lot of damage, was making things a lot worse. And it also includes my responses to crappy things out in the world, or things that trigger my issues as such. And again, we all have these where I might have listened to this person's teachings previously and thought, oh, that makes complete sense in this situation out in the world. Now I don't have that. And so I'm going to stop paying attention to that area, and this whole left side is crossed out. That's the end of that. And that is my insight. The right side is far more simple. I do meditation and music, and it stays as that single technique all the way up. Like, I create music, obviously there are shifts with that, there are insights I have, there's dream interpretation, but there's no layers or complexity here. I make a song, and it is true that that does seem to shift my emotions in a way that nothing else does, in a deep way. I can shift parts of myself that are still very immature into more mature ways of viewing things through music. But there's no complexity here, there's no levels. There's just play music, and there's different elements to music. There's the vocals, there's the techniques, and there's various different things. But that's all this is. So dream interpretation, law of one, human design, music kinds of stuff is the thing that is now dealing with this black box of subconscious murk. And that's that. As I said, there is a human design aspect of this that is very relevant, but I'm not going to go into that in this video. But it seems like there is a possibility that something happening in my life could also be happening in other people's lives in a different way. So I'm experiencing transits during a certain few weeks, and loads of other people in the world are experiencing those same transits, of course. They have different charts, they have different life experiences, but the overall pattern, the overall story of society is the same in many ways. Anyway, thank you for listening.